Pre-need funerals, burials, and cremation since 1975. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg. Call 256-245-4361. That's Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg. In obituary news this morning, Ms. Betty Cleveland died at her residence overnight in Sylacauga. Curtis and Son Funeral Home will announce the arrangements. Mr. Mark Betts died at his residence in Childersburg on Sunday. Curtis and Son Funeral Home will announce the arrangements. Funeral service for Cindy Breckel of Rockford. Visitation will be Wednesday, 11 until 2 at Rockford Baptist Church, with a service following at 2. A burial in the Rockford City Cemetery. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, directing that service. Also, visitation for Gerald Young will be on Tuesday at Calvary Baptist Church in Childersburg from 12:30 until 2. Service time at 2 from the church. Burial in Valley Hill Cemetery in Pell City. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel, directing that service. And funeral service for Cynthia Kirkland of Sylacauga. That visitation will be Tuesday from 1 until 2 at Curtis and Son North, with a service at 2 at the North Chapel, with burial in the Evergreen Cemetery. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, directing that service. Mr. Virgil Butterworth died on Friday at Coosa Valley Medical Center. Mr. Butterworth was remembered yesterday at Curtis and Son Funeral Home with a graveside service at Evergreen Cemetery. Many of you knew Virgil and his wife Tommy and son Dwayne. And Virgil, longtime employee back in the day with Farm Best and Flavor Rich Dairies in Sylacauga, and passed away at the age of 82. And he was remembered yesterday with a graveside service. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, directed that service. And Mr. Jimmy McGrady died at his residence this morning. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, will announce the arrangements. Funeral service for Robert Gross Jr., age 42, will be Wednesday, May 19th at AFM Church of God Campground, with Bishop James Truss officiating. Interment in the Pine Grove Church Cemetery. Mr. Gross died May the 11th at Regional Medical Center in Anniston. Anniston Funeral Service directing that service. Helen P. Fuller, age 60, died at her residence on Saturday. Died Saturday at Coosa Valley Medical Center Community Funeral Home in Sylacauga, in charge of the arrangements. Funeral service for Mrs. Frida Hornsby Morgan, age 70, of Alexander City, is today at 2 o'clock from the chapel of Radley Funeral Home. Reverend Richard Hall Jr. officiating. Burial in the Hillview Memorial Park. Mrs. Morgan died May 13th in Anniston. The family will accept flowers or memorial contribution to be made to the Alzheimer's Foundation. Memorial messages may be sent to the family at radleyfuneralhome.com. Radley Funeral Home directing. Celebration of life for Mr. Ronald Joseph Pardue. That service will be Thursday at Church in the Pines in Kalijah, Alabama. That'll start at 10:30. In lieu of flowers, you may make a monetary donation to the Children's Harbor in Mr. Ron's name. Radney Funeral Home, Alexander City, directing. And Mrs. Sylvia Bradford, age 44, of Goodwater, died May the 11th. Final arrangements entrusted to Armour's Memorial Funeral Home in Alexander City. This obituary report this morning brought to you by Curtis and Son Funeral Home, the North Chapel on Highway 21 in Sylacauga, and the Childersburg Chapel on Highway 280 in Childersburg. For pre-need funerals, burials, or cremation since 1975, Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.